what do you think are the biggest challenges in data engineering right now?
I think there are a few like massive challenges. The first one is just there's just so many new tools that have come out, and there's so much sort of emphasis towards AI and AI tooling that it's very difficult to understand what should folks be doing, what should folks not be doing. I think to answer a little bit more about what Fivetran does, just as a quick background, I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer of Fivetran, and we move data for companies. We're the global leader in data movement. Loading data for Fortune 500 companies all the way down to tiny startup companies, and such as like OpenAI and Snowflake, Databricks, Morgan Stanley, NAB, and thousands of other customers. And so I often think about the world in terms of data movement. And so probably a lot of today's conversation will skew that direction, just so the audience understands that background. But yeah, to answer your question more directly, I think it's just this explosion of tooling that's happened over the last few years, and understanding like where should we invest, where should we not invest, what are the right things to build on top of, because ultimately, data is like one big stack, right? And you have to build on top of each layer, and the layers that you're building on top of, they have to be layers that can survive for a long time, right? And so anyways, that's the direction, the biggest problem that I would say.
Okay, that's absolutely fascinating. There are so many tools, and it's something we struggle with at DataCamp as well. It's like, which tools do you teach? Because are they going to be around in a few years? Which ones are the most important ones? So do you want to elaborate on that? Like, how do you go about deciding which tools you need in your data stack?
Yeah, so I mean, fundamentally, again, like, when you think about the overall data stack, there's the biggest problem is basically like every company has a ton of data, and now that data is all over the place. And so, we'll talk about this at some point probably today, but at the end of the day, you want to use and utilize this data, and and that is like the biggest, that's the overall goal of building a data platform, right? So you're using it for AI, you're using it for, now that's like the biggest one, AI ML. You're using it for BI, for building applications. Like, these are some of the use cases. But then the question becomes like, okay, well, where's all this data? Why is this data everywhere? How do we get access to this data? Do we centralize it? Do we decentralize it? Who has control over that data? And I think some of the biggest challenges that our customers and the market faces today is around just first and foremost scalability. Like, okay, can I get access to that data? Second biggest one is security. Like, is it secure? And last one is just, compliance and governance. Like, who has access to data? Who doesn't have access to the data? And as you've seen, there's been a ton of, GDPR type, problems over the last few years with, like Uber just got fined $300 million or nearly $300 million for passing data from Europe to the US. That is a problem that they're facing with governance, right? They don't have the right tooling in place. They shared it. So, I think these are some of the challenges that the companies are trying to face, and how you face that, in my opinion, is that I would say the thing that companies should be using is what I would call the modern data stack. Are you familiar with this, Richie?
Yeah. So the modern data stack is a very well-known concept, but a lot of different guests seem to define it differently. So I'd love to hear your take on this. What's in the modern data stack?
It's funny because we're, I would say, part of the original group of tooling for the modern data stack now almost 9 years ago. And there's even like a postmodern data stack, and we can talk about that shortly. But what I would define the modern data stack is a cloud-based data warehouse or storage layer, generally data warehouse. And you're taking data and loading that into the data warehouse from all the different places that you have it. And then you're building tooling on top of the data warehouse, and you're doing more of an ELT versus ETL type workload. So in other words, like, we can go into the history if you want of like all the different stacks in the past, but essentially the order of operations is different than what it was prior, which is you extract, you load, then you transform, and you build this whole ecosystem on top of the data warehouse. And that's, in my definition, would be the modern data stack.